Welcome to the Pander Brothers podcast. I'm Jakob.
I'm Arnold.
And we just released our indie thriller Altered Ego and are currently in the midst of doing a series of podcasts on the life cycle of making an indie film. This episode, we're tackling casting. We are in the pre-production phase, talking about pre-production,
Right.
And how this episode, we're going to dive into how we cast our film.
Yeah, and who's going to be these fictional characters? Going to bring them to life.
Bring them to life. In terms of making, a low-budget independent film, and having seen a lot of low-budget independent films, and one of the big tells often in terms of a low-budget independent films is just the quality of the acting. And for us, it was very important to have this be even though it was a genre type of story, to have it really be a performance-based film and really lean into trying to find really great performers. And we also wanted to be able to tap into, because of that, SAG actors, be able to try to find, and because I think part of that was because we did hope to find some recognizable talent to be able to put into the film as well.
And part of that was just the practical nature of, needing to find someone to attract a distributor and to be the face on the DVD cover, the poster.
So there was twofold. It was that kind of producer hat going, let's try to find some recognizable talent. And then it was the creative writer director hats of let's really find great performers to do this. And so...
And unique faces, too. That was something we wanted to kind of like characters and people who looked interesting to look at, that would be visually
definitely
striking.
So we knew that we wanted to get a casting director on board to help us cast the film and help us access professional actors in the community and also beyond. Through the grapevine, we were connected with Lana of Anchor Casting, who is a very reputable casting agency up here. They go by Cast Iron now, but she was a casting director on Wild,
Leverage and Grimm.
So a mutual friend made a connect with her, and we got a dialogue going, sent her the screenplay, and she really loved the screenplay and knew that we were a low-budget venture. We were not Wild. We were not Grimm. We were a couple of guys.
We're wild and grim in other
We were wild and grim in other ways. And so she came on board, and she connected us with one of the folks that worked out at her casting agency, a woman by the name of Lori Lewis, who also was a very skilled and experienced casting person, who basically took us under her wing because she knew we were totally green.
She reminded us of that.
Yes, yeah.
In a loving way.
In a very loving way. And so she was amazing.
And we were. I mean, this was sort of like, we weren't total deer in the headlights, but there was a lot of discovery, and this was uncharted territory.
Yeah, we were now moving into very uncharted territory. And so she worked with us to take in all of the ideas that we had in terms of the types that we were wanting to cast in the film, the characters that we had written. And we set up a casting and put the word out to, she helped us make a selection of people to reach out to. And we scheduled a casting call and brought in a bunch of people to come in and read portions of the script. And I mean, that was basically the first time that we heard actors reading the lines of these characters. Which was
completely surreal, because we hadn't done any table reads or anything. So we were just into this. We were kind of boom, boom, boom,
going headstrong.
Yeah. So suddenly, it was just incredible to hear that and to see that. And in a way, it was, it was partly, validating. It was like, oh, okay, that actually sounds like something that someone would say, because we'd written a lot of graphic novels and we'd written a couple screenplays, but again, never had seen actors, certainly professional actors, read our lines. So that was great. And
it was super inspiring.
We almost had to hide how giddy we were, I think, because we were just in the moment.
Keep a straight face, like, oh. But it was, so several things were going on there. One, it was really fascinating to see how different actors interpreted these words and performed these pieces. And so some people played it in, it was played in very different ways. So it was cool to just see the flexibility and the range in which those scenes could be interpreted and performed. And then
And you
another,
didn't really want to get into anybody's head either, because we're looking for this archetype or this tone of someone, say with Dylan,
yeah.
but you didn't want to put that in their in their mind too much.
Sure. I mean, we were basically just letting people come in and do what they had prepared to do
Right.
to present. And then if things felt like, wow, this is really cool, that we were kind of gravitating towards somebody, we might have them redo it and kind of do a little tweak on it. But I think that the other thing that it did was it really got us moving towards it got us back deeply into a creative zone. We were starting to feel the movie come to life in front of us, just on this casting alone. And we were seeing that we were getting closer to the shore of actually making a movie. These parts were falling into place. And so it was definitely incredibly validated and incredibly inspiring and energizing to see this start to happen. A great piece of advice that Laurie Lewis gave us as we stepped into this day at the casting was to not get too married to who we had asked to come read for particular roles, and to keep an open mind to casting them in other roles if they didn't seem to work out for the roles that we had brought them in for. And that was really super helpful because it gave us, it did open up our minds in a couple of instances that really had a profound impact on how the casting would unfold on the film. So several people came in to read for the part of Dylan, our lead architect. And it was interesting to see the different contrasts and the different characters that came in. And we gravitated towards two guys, both with really strong performance ability, but a very different kind of physicality. One guy had a very kind of leading man, kind of heroic, very sporty, physically fit guy who seemed like a kind of heroic leading man type. And then
real big personality, real friendly in real
very
life,
charismatic.
but that came through. And
And he also, in his read, seemed like he totally fit the bill of one of these ambitious creative class archetypes. So he was great, and we definitely.
But you could see him then going for a run and drinking the matcha and having all of doing yoga and maybe a little bit more of that kind of charged energy that's also kind of a sexy leading man vibe, that we thought, and it'd bring maybe almost a kind of that, I don't know, that element that was maybe gives it a mainstream feel in a way.
Yeah, it definitely felt like he would fit a real, very mainstream type of
that we could then
heroic
tweak,
archetype.
and then we could,
But then there was another guy who read, and he had an incredible naturalism and incredible spontaneity. And
also very charismatic.
Yeah, but he also had a different kind of physicality. He was a more slight fellow and
a little more cerebral.
Yeah, kind of had that,
but witty and charming,
intellectual, witty, charming, but did seem like somebody who would be more vulnerable to a villain, and he almost felt a little bit like a classic Hitchcock type of protagonist, like kind of a Jimmy Stewart type,
classic features.
Yeah, and so we were really. I remember having a conversation about both of these guys and kind of like kind of
torn
weighing
between the two.
Yeah, what would this film look like with each one of these guys?
And October, who plays Janine, had great chemistry with. Knew them both in real life,
That's right.
But had great chemistry with you. So it was like, okay, because we pretty much knew. I mean, she was just like, "You're great." I remember that. Like
October Moore, who plays Janine, who is the fiancée of Dylan.
But also she played against both
Yeah,
perfectly. So
yeah.
it was really more about who's going to be Dylan.
Who was going to be a
So
Dylan.
anyway.
And so we basically started leaning towards the guy who was the more kind of heroic, figure archetype. And then that, of course, influenced who would be our nemesis, our
Right.
antagonist. And there
And
were
we were,
several people that were
yeah, local actors that were casting for the part of Wes, and there was a a few really great cast. I mean, it was kind of amazing. I mean, there was some great performances, but there was one kind of younger guy, maybe the same age as, maybe like in his 30s, but he just had an edge, and he had kind of dark hair, and he had kind of these kind of,
it was like a contemporary Klaus Kinski.
yeah,
but
very
kind of
striking
edgy.
features, and looked like, could be, a little twisted if you wanted. He just had that feel to him of a kind of an edgy dude, and so you wouldn't want to piss off, right?
So we had two cast members figured out. We had our lead and our antagonist, and the next really interesting person that came in to read for the casting was for the Asian twins, and
Which was a challenging role because it had to be someone who could, play two parts. Ideally speak Mandarin, but we thought, well, that's probably not realistic to have every Asian woman who comes in be able to speak Mandarin. That's just, we're going to have to find a workaround, maybe post-dub, something. But we thought, let's just try to find a person, an energy, a face, someone who can play this part, and go from there. But and so a really great actress, local actress, Laura Dine, came in and just really had this amazing energy, great personality, all this sort of very charismatic, very beautiful. And we thought, wow, she's great, but for whatever reason, just tonally didn't feel like what we were envisioning for this part. So, that was one of those moments where we were like, okay, she was cool. And I remember, Laura was like, well, let's give a hold, I guess they say.
yeah, let's keep her here, keep her on
here,
standby.
keep her on
'cause maybe
standby.
there's-
Right. So we just she was just hanging out. And then we kind of moved into other areas. There was some other folks that came in for the parts of the architects. We were doing a reading with our Dylan, and someone playing chef, the sort of the lead architect guy, and then we had this character of Peter, who was the kind of competitive one. And so we were doing a party scene, and they're all playing against each other, and we just had this feeling like, there's just a lot of dudes, a lot of this men in a room, in a party, that are sort of these, creative class professional men. And we thought, what if we switched it out? And so we took the character of Peter, and I thought, well, why don't we bring in Laura for that character and see how that plays? And it was amazing. It was like this very natural, sort of different thing, but very natural, and felt very, in a weird way, more realistic and more interesting.
Yeah.
So we basically were like, okay, yeah, that feels right. And so, the challenge there was to get her to really embrace a character that was a little colder and a little more
That competitive
energy. So they would maybe didn't really get along that well. So
But I think
a bit of
what
a
was-
foil to Dylan.
Exactly. And the other cool thing about that, which was unexpected, and it really opened up a whole different layer of creative dynamics in the film, is it really influenced just the thematic aspects of the film. So by casting Laura in that part, we started to see her as kind of a doppelganger to Dylan, kind of being like one and the same, except we were seeing a kind of a male version and a female version. And
Both very ambitious, both very kind of, talented and on a similar career track. But,
But then there there was also kind of like an underlying, relational tension. There was some kind of energy.
maybe
going
they
on
had
there.
a past that was not just competitive,
Yeah, and at the same time, it also echoed in a very interesting and subtle way Dylan, who his obsession with his neighbor, who was this airline stewardess who is Chinese. And so all of these things started to kind of become interwoven in terms of thematically without us even going into it expecting to do that, but it actually gave the whole tone of the story and the experience some really cool unexpected qualities in doing that. So anyway, Laura ended up getting that role,
And we didn't
did an
change
amazing
any of the
job.
dialogue. It was still
Yeah.
all the dialogue of Peter, but now it was Tessa.
So by the end of that evening, we pretty much had, I would say, like we felt like we had maybe 80% of our cast.
Yeah. We didn't have the twins
in.
yet.
We didn't have the twins yet, but we had our lead character. We had our antagonist, our protagonist. We had the fiance. We had basically the architect. So the main body of our cast really fell into place that evening.
Until
And this was like, I mean, a couple weeks out from our start date, and we got a call from the guy that we had cast to be Dylan, who at the 11th hour had to bow out of the film. And we were suddenly like, holy smokes, that's a pretty radical thing to try to kind of pull together quickly, but it was what it was. He couldn't do it, and so we had a quick confab, and we thought, well, okay, Josh Ringert, who was the other guy that we saw at the casting, who was a little bit more in that classic Hitchcockian,
kind of
archetype,
everyman type of
the wrong man, the wrong place, at the wrong time. We got him on the phone immediately, and he was still available, and we were like, fabulous, you're going to be in our movie. Let's do this. But the other real radical challenge that created was that the combination of Josh with the actor that we had chosen for the villain, really, that mesh didn't really work for us. And so all of a sudden, by virtue of losing the Dylan lead, we really lost our antagonist lead as well. And that kind of suddenly threw us into a bit of a tailspin.
At the time, back to the point about finding a marquee name and someone who could kind of be that face on the poster, that was something we were also working on at the same time. And so it was actually Stephanie, our production manager and co-producer. She had a line on someone in LA that was, a character actor, professional, who'd, been in things. He was more, he wasn't a big name, but he was a face. He'd been in movies like Too Fast, Too Furious and kind of action roles, usually as a heavy or a bad guy. So we were a little like, okay, let's keep an open mind. And his tape came in. And what was interesting is, so, there was, Mo Galini on tape, and he did a reading that was the airport scene, which, really took everybody by surprise, because I think, just from looking at him, you sort of really powerful, striking features and physical presence, even through the video. And, but then there was this tonality. There was something in his voice. There was something about the way he read the lines that sort of revealed this deeper sort of vulnerability, this other side of him that was very human. And that just really struck us, because we, for one, he really felt like kind of a Hollywood action bad guy, if you will. And it was a little David and Goliath almost with Josh. And so we thought, well, that's actually really interesting.
Kind
it's
of
very
cool. Yeah.
cool.
It was like, whoa,
and
that's
unexpected.
a real,
And then there's all of this vulnerability and humanity. And so we thought, well, okay, let's just take a chance with this and see what happens. And so we cast Mo and Josh. And so that sort of got us also in this place of like, okay, we have someone who, is somewhat recognizable, and we can kind of think about that as we get to the marketing side later. But
that basically left us with one final piece of the puzzle, which was the characters of Anne and Yu Ling, the twin sisters. And Arnold had been
and
also pursuing some other potential marquee talent.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend who was a casting agent in LA, and I'd really been sort of, trying to get, again, marquee talent, someone that could, move the dial on that side of things to kind of ensure a distribution deal. So she was, looking out there and we were really against the clock because we had put it on the calendar. So we had only a week or so or two, maybe at the most, to lock her in. And so she had feelers out, and there was actual interest from an actress named Bai Ling, or the script had gotten to her, and but she had suddenly a scheduling conflict with the TV show Lost, which was being filmed at the time, or like I think the third season or something like that. But I don't even know if she even got her eyes on the script. It was just one of those kind of Hollywood, oh, I'm trying to get it to her, and I mentioned it, and she's interested, but she's got scheduling. So it was all just like that kind of thing. So we go, okay, well, that's not going to happen. And so we got so desperate. We were like, you know what? We have all of this kind of criteria around this character of needing to speak Mandarin and
potentially being actual twins,
or being, I mean, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But then also, in the certain age range, and also someone ideally kind of, conventionally attractive for, that someone like the character of Dylan would have this straying eye, right? Someone very, beautiful. And so, we put an ad in Craigslist.
Yeah, it was like it was the Hail Mary of the casting phase.
And which I don't know what that says is, don't ever rule anything out, because suddenly
it was an open call.
It was an open call, and we got a call back, and it was a woman named Jen Hong, and she was is a modern dancer and had done some acting, I think, in college, and
it also studied Mandarin.
Of all things. So she walks through the door, and beautiful young woman, and very sort of inspired to be there, very nervous. And we actually did a kind of impromptu reading in the production office. And it was just kind of felt really natural and really, again, taking a kind of a chance with someone who was kind of not, as experienced as we would have liked, but we had a very, it was a tall order.
It's a tall order. And it was just, there was a good energy there. Yeah. There was a good enthusiasm, and there was a bravery, right? She was like, I can do this. I want to do this. And we had run out of options, and there was our character.
We just sort of took a leap of faith.
Yeah. And she had a good friend who was, available to essentially play a body double, which would be kind of her, that's how we would kind of approach the filming the twins, which
kind of old school movie magic.
We would get some old school movie magic in there. But basically, at that point, the main cast had been locked, and we were closing in on our start date. The final character of the film, a film about an architect, was the architecture itself, the landscape, the locations. Stick around for this next episode, where we're going to get into how we lock down all the locations to create the environment and landscape and
of Alter Ego.
The world of Alter Ego.